Hello, I'm Susan Birge. I'm the Director of Counseling and Psychological Services at the university, and joining me today is Lisa Arnold. Lisa is the Clinical Director of our Collegiate Recovery Program. She's also our licensed alcohol and drug counselor at the university, as well as one of our therapists at Counseling and Psychological Services. We're delighted that you're joining us today, and what we're especially excited about is welcoming your sons and daughters this weekend to campus. However, it's not just about this weekend and a welcome, but importantly, the experience that we're invested in for your sons and daughters to have a top-notch educational experience at Fairfield U. What that means is not only a superb academic experience, but the out-of-the-classroom experience, their engagement, their relationships, and how they develop as men and women for others. That's a Jesuit value, and it's one that we uphold and really try to breathe life into at Fairfield University. So men and women for others, what we mean is not only care of ourselves, but care of the other, not only taking responsibility for ourselves, but importantly for others. You might say, how does this play out in terms of alcohol and drugs? What we're trying to achieve at Fairfield University is young men and women who not only take good care of their health, their well-being, make healthy choices, use good judgment, but also care for the other. And we'll talk a little bit more about our bystander training in a bit. We're up against quite a challenge, though. Late adolescents, young adults, their brains are not yet formed, specifically the prefrontal cortex. This is the area of the brain in which emotion, risk-taking, impulsivity comes out of. So if this area of the brain is not formed, and it's not, probably until they're close to 25 years old, we're up against trying to have them use good judgment, make healthy decisions, and reduce their risk-taking because there's a biologic basis for this behavior. How does that play out? Well, we're keenly aware that over the course of the 4 years, college students, most, not all, are going to experiment. They're going to at least try alcohol. Some will try some drugs. Some will not, but they will be in the presence of others who will be drinking and drugging. Of concern to Lisa and I and the people at this university is that in the last few years we've seen an increase in our students and students across the nation mixing alcohol and other substances. That's a concern. Now we've taken risk to a whole new level, a level that has a great deal of danger, and that certainly is a significant fear of ours. We hope that our college students get a better sense of how to take care of themselves. We want to teach them about alcohol and drugs, how it impacts their minds, how it impacts their bodies. But education alone is not the answer. What we've realized is that to mature, for that brain to develop, it's often experiences that create maturation. What could that be? Maybe the experience of a hangover, a blackout, maybe unwanted sexual activity, maybe getting written up at the university and having judicial consequences, or worse yet, legal consequences. Maybe their reputation or their relationships could be impacted. These are the kinds of things that, when internalized, can help an individual make healthier choices, and so learn from the behavior. What we want you to know is that in the first 6 weeks of students coming to university, any university, it's called a freshman phenomenon. The first 6 weeks tend to have a higher incidence of alcohol use, maybe drug use, but riskier behavior. Well, why is it? They're coming to a new environment, they're uncomfortable, they're socially awkward probably, and a lot of this is driven by a desire to want to belong, to want to fit in, to form groups, to be accepted by others. So this particular chunk of time in the beginning of freshman year is fraught with concern. We do a range of activities. We do education, information. We do programming in the residence hall. You'll hear more about all of our efforts, including interventions and treatment and referrals that Lisa handles on her end. But what we want to do with you today is have you get a better understanding of this age group, what goes on with them in terms of their relationship with alcohol and other drugs, and importantly, what Fairfield U is doing to respond and ideally partner with you. Lisa's going to talk a little bit more about why our students are using. We're going to go to the next slide.
You can use the arrows.
Okay. Why our students are drinking and drugging. I talked a little bit about the first 6 weeks, but this is a more generalized idea of what goes on for them that they might engage in this behavior.
Thank you, Susan. So why do students drink and use drugs? This profile was taken, this survey, recently, and it explored different reasons why students come on campus and they either continue drinking from high school or they start drinking on a college campus. And as you can see, particularly the top half is mostly about socialization. And breaking the ice, enhancing the activity. Students are, like Susan said, a lot of times socially awkward when they come on campus, and they use that, and students laugh when I use the term social lubricant, but a lot of times it's about their new environment, and it's about how to fit in socially. The third one kind of sparks something for me in giving people something to do. When students arrive at a new environment, they're not sure what to do next. They're not sure from morning, noon, and night. Everything looks different to them. So they tend to follow the crowd. In the first few weeks at Fairfield University, clubs and activities are forming, and we have what's called the Club Fair, where students are invited to come and explore all the different booths and find out the different activities on campus and the different events, and that's when they can really sink their teeth in and start getting involved in some things that they may have had in high school, and we find that alternative activities can reduce their use because it does provide for them alternative activities.
We want to give you a sense of what we're seeing at Fairfield University campus, and again, we're not that much different from not only our peer institutions but other colleges and universities, but we're mindful where we are different, and we'll talk to you about that as well. The current trends are that college students are not simply drinking socially. So they're not having a glass of wine with dinner, they're not having a cocktail. It tends to be that they're binge drinking. And binge drinking is determined or defined as 5 or more drinks for a male in a given period of time and 4 or more drinks for a woman in a given time. What's happened over the last 5 to 10 years is that students tend to what we consider pre-game. And by pre-gaming, what they're doing is they're using shots of hard alcohol. So imagine if a 17, 18, 19-year-old is drinking 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 shots, maybe let's say of vodka or rum or tequila. They think they're still feeling okay, so they're going to continue to drink. The reality is the body has not metabolized the alcohol. It hasn't even processed it yet. So here they have what will be a high blood alcohol level and yet feel pretty good because they drank very quickly and the body hasn't taken it in and processed it yet, and so they keep drinking. So oftentimes when Lisa and I meet with students, they might say, well, I started off the night with 5 or 6 shots, and then I went on and I had 5 beers plus. Well, at the end of that, in a period of time, we have an individual who is significantly compromised, but didn't see it coming. So it wasn't a slow increase of feeling a little bit good, a little bit relaxed, kind of that high feeling, and then getting that feeling of being drunk or uncertain or dazed, all of a sudden they're hit with that. It's like they don't even get that initial feeling of just relaxing a little bit or feeling more comfortable. So certainly in your conversations with your son and daughters, you want to talk about this notion of pre-gaming with hard alcohol. And you also want to talk to them about the amount of alcohol and how the body takes time to process it, and how if they drink too rapidly, it's very bad outcomes in terms of all the difficulties that they encounter physically, but behaviorally. It could be pretty tough. What are we seeing in terms of types of drugs? As I said, in terms of alcohol, we're seeing more hard liquor than we used to. It used to be colleges mostly drank a lot of beer. We're not seeing that. We're seeing more hard alcohol use by these students. Pretty good amount of marijuana on our campus. Lisa's going to talk to you a little bit about the impact of decriminalization on marijuana and the messages that that sends to our students, which can be mixed messages. A number of students come to university having been diagnosed, maybe in elementary or secondary school, with ADHD or ADD. So they might be coming with a stimulant, such as Adderall or Ritalin or Concerta. They're coming with that, and it doesn't take long to find out that when you're drinking and then you use a stimulant, it feels, because your brain is stimulated by the drug and depressed by the alcohol, it can feel like the kind of high you achieve is going to last longer and in fact be a less sloppy drunk. So again, they figure that out. It's a really, really bad combination, because as you can imagine, the brain is getting stimulated and depressed at the same time. And that's certainly bad for the brain and the central nervous system. We're seeing other drug use, again, as most colleges and universities are. Cocaine, pain medication. Certainly there's a national epidemic on opioid use. In Connecticut last year, 917 fatal overdoses. And we are keenly aware of this. And this is something that Lisa and I are trying to put in the forefront of students, is the risk of combining these drugs, the risk of combining alcohol with these drugs, and the danger of using these pain meds, heroin, that can be laced with fentanyl. So we do a lot of education in that regard. Unfortunately, we're seeing students who are very stressed, academics, sports, whatever's going on, and they like the feel of a benzodiazepam. This might be Xanax, the old Valium, Ativan, lorazepam, and so, that can relax them and reduce their stress. But imagine if you're mixing it with alcohol. Alcohol is a depressant, and you're adding in a benzodiazepam, which is a depressant. And our fear is that if the central nervous system becomes too depressed, the brain will stop messaging for the individual to breathe. So this is a particularly dangerous combination. Some students, again, not specific to Fairfield, but some students, if they're going to a concert, they like to use Molly or ecstasy. It can make them feel particularly euphoric and affectionate and happy. We do a lot of education and outreach if there's concerts on campus, if that's the case. Last year on campus, we had 133 students who were charged with violating the university's policy on illegal drug use. As you can imagine, many more students encountered write-ups or disciplinary charges for alcohol use. So that's, again, not dissimilar to other colleges and universities. This is what we're dealing with, and this is very much in the forefront of our efforts to keep these young men and women safe and healthy. The next thing that we want to talk to you about is, again, a little bit more information regarding Fairfield and how we look against our peer group. So Lisa will take you through this chart.
So here's a profile of our incoming students looking at high-risk drinking rates prior to matriculation to school. And so on the right, you will see the problematic rates of high-risk drinkers versus light to moderate drinking versus non-drinking. And what we tend to see and what the trend is at Fairfield is that not only are we in the Northeast, which does produce higher drinking rates than around the country, but also in Jesuit universities, what occurs is also slightly elevated. And so Fairfield tends to run a little bit higher in terms of the higher risk drinkers. And across the board, this is the case for Northeastern and for Jesuit universities against their peer groups in other parts of the country.
I want to talk to you a little bit about getting it real in terms of what are the consequences of often what is this binge drinking. Again, we're looking at experimentation, we're looking at use, and then we're looking at abuse. And abuse is binge drinking. 1,825 college students typically die every year for alcohol-related deaths. That means maybe by injuries, including motor vehicle. That's an awful lot of promising, beautiful young lives to lose from substances. In terms of assaults, it's not uncommon. If there is an assault, whether it's a sexual assault or a fight, that alcohol fueled it, maybe didn't cause it, but fueled it. Most, and we don't have that many sexual assaults, but those sexual assaults that we do have on campus, I would say most of them, there is alcohol involved. Academic problems, remember, they're coming here for a really excellent academic experience, and 1 out of 4 college students experiences reduced performance, academic performance, because of their alcohol and drug use. It's not uncommon at the end of a semester where we have students coming in and saying, well, I didn't go to a lot of my classes, I missed a lot of assignments, and when we look at what was going on, a lot of the avoidance, the procrastination, the missed classes are a result of what they consider their partying. Well, it's their alcohol and drug abuse at that point. It's an awful lot of money. It's a huge commitment. It's interfering with their health. So these are huge consequences to the drinking and drugging that goes on at universities. Other problems you can see, we're looking at suicide attempts. We've had students who were not actively suicidal. They were not depressed, but they got so emotional, so impulsive, and their judgment was so poor while they were under the influence that maybe they made an attempt or made remarks that frightened a number of their friends regarding taking their life. We certainly have seen vandalism, people damaging property. They would never normally damage property, but again, under the influence, using poor judgment. And certainly we have a wonderful public safety department here. These guys are terrific. They're not out to simply be the cops in terms of a municipality, but they are policing, they are EMTs, and they are very mindful that if an individual that they encounter is under the influence, they assess them, and if warranted, they are transported to a local hospital. And that generates a whole series of what we like to think of as educational opportunities for that individual to really reflect and look at the behavior that got them into a hospital for their alcohol or drug use. Lisa, as I said, is our licensed alcohol and drug person, counselor on campus, and so she presents, her model is harm reduction, and she's going to talk to you a little bit about how that shapes our work here at Fairfield.
Thank you, Susan. So a lot of the students come to see me voluntarily. Some are referred after they have been documented by the Dean of Students' office for sanctions involving drug and alcohol use. But I tend to take the same approach with all students, and that the premise behind harm reduction is to meet them where they're at and try to tweak their behavior in a way that they could produce more healthy results and less risky drinking. So whether it be in a group format or in an individual session, I welcome all students to come in and have a conversation with me about what is happening with their drinking in a very non-judgmental way. Letting them make their own decisions and perhaps guiding them in a way that they can make healthier decisions and have less risky behavior. And what that might look like is I review with them different areas of their lives where alcohol may have impacted them in a negative way. For instance, your future as a student at Fairfield University. Susan mentioned academic problems. There are also disciplinary problems with the Dean of Students' office, and when they're more severe, they could be at a legal level. Are you having problems with your friends? Is it interfering with your relationships at home? And we look at all these different areas and we decide how alcohol has impacted them and what they might want to do to change that behavior. These problems don't happen on an island with alcohol, and I very rarely see a student who comes in and says, I drink a lot, but everything else is fine. So it's really about an emphasis on the mind, body, spirit, and producing a better student as a whole. And if that involves less drinking or drug use, then we can have one conversation about that, or it might be many. Students might sign up for a wellness group to perhaps look at these behaviors in comparison to what other students are doing on campus, or they might want to do it privately in an individual session, or we can do a combination of those. Susan had mentioned sexual assaults on campus and other disciplinary assault charges that may happen. What I like to look at is what kind of person are you sober versus the kind of decision-making that happens when you're under the influence, because oftentimes, and more often than not, the student sitting in front of me doesn't look like they can make these kinds of decisions. When you introduce alcohol into that prefrontal cortex, it hijacks their ability to have good decision-making, and their judgment is very impaired. And conversations about this in an ongoing way can be highly successful with these students. Also, to emphasize a concern for others, and when you see students who are in the presence of others who are getting into trouble, and to know what to do in those situations. And we have bystander intervention where we do training with students who are noticing that others might be in trouble and what to do on campus and who to contact and how to get involved in a way that they'll know that it won't be a punitive action, that you are helping your friends, you're helping each other, and you're watching out for each other.
I hope you've picked up through our presentation that we're very focused on that we are Jesuit, we are Catholic, we are Fairfield University. And so our mission calls for us to uphold these Jesuit values. I talked to you about men and women for others, care of self and care of others, responsibility for self and responsibility for others. Cura personalis, excuse me, is another one. Care of the mind, body, and the spirit, so the development of the whole person. And that includes positive health and wellness messaging that we do, respecting yourself. Lisa mentioned the bystander approach, again, the men and women for others. I can't tell you how many times we encounter a student saying, you know, my friend passed out and he or she was really drunk and they were vomiting, but I cleaned up the bed and I let them sleep it off. Well, when we question, we say, what went on for you that you didn't get help for that individual? Oh, I didn't want to get in trouble, or I didn't want to get them in trouble. And that's immaturity. That's taking care of yourself in terms of protecting you from any kind of consequence and risking the life of another. And so we try really hard at Fairfield. We have amnesty, meaning if you call public safety, if you say, I'm really worried about somebody, or I just walked down the pathway and there's somebody in the bushes and they're drunk, that individual's not going to get what the kids think of as in trouble. And we congratulate them on that. Do the right thing, and the right thing is getting help for another. We also say, and a number of students do this, if you don't feel good, if you're scaring yourself after drinking, if your heart is racing, if you're vomiting, don't go to bed. Don't go to another 18 or 19-year-old to take care of you. Have public safety assess you. Maybe you do need to go to the hospital. Maybe you do need to be hydrated with an IV. Hopefully you don't need to be intubated. But certainly we're trying really hard to message to do the right thing in terms of being responsible for yourself and others. What we also teach them in the bystander, don't let somebody get in a car. If you see somebody drinking, we actually teach them, we give examples. Get them to stop drinking. Take the drink away in a nice way. Maybe you have to be forceful. And you say, I'm really worried about you. Let's leave. I'll go with you. Or if you see somebody going off with a member of the opposite sex and they're not able to give affirmative consent, or they're not intact, help them out. Hey, come on, let's go back here, let's do something else. So we give examples where we're trying to get everybody to be part of a community that takes care of themselves and each other. We also work really, really hard. We put a lot of resources into alcohol-free activities. We want to create a fun, a safe environment. We're always trying to make it acceptable or social norm that you can go out without drinking. And for a population of Fairfield University students, that's very natural. They find each other, they find ways to have a great time and not have to drink. But again, that pull to be part of a group, sense of belonging, to fit in can be so great that some of our students get more sucked into that. We have a first-year experience. We call it FYE experience, and it's very good for community building, but it also has all these educational opportunities, bystander training. So again, it's part of so many things that we're trying to do at Fairfield to develop our students making healthier choices and be mindful of others. Lisa's going to tell you about all the different resources we have on campus.
So some of our Fairfield University resources, at the top of the list is counseling and psychological services, where Susan and I can both be found during the week, as well as many other psychologists, therapists, who are all on hand to help with many of not only the issues that we talked about, but students who come in with signs and symptoms of anxiety and depression, or having a difficult time adjusting to school, homesickness. And what's nice is that you can call and make an appointment as a student, and we also offer daily walk-in hours from 2 to 4 p.m. We also have the Student Health Center, which is conveniently located next door to the Counseling and Psychological Services, and it is essentially our medical center where students can go in and with any ailments, they can see a doctor who we have on site for certain hours, and there will be someone available to them from the hours of 8:30 until actually 8 p.m. at night. Counseling and Psychological Services has varying hours, but certain nights of the week we are also available until 7 p.m. There is the Dean of Students office, where students can sometimes be referred for documentation of violation of certain policies on campus, but the Dean of Students is also an invaluable resource for any student who's having difficulty, as the Dean of Students office will know how to resource and help that student find the appropriate department that they might need to talk to if they're struggling in any way. We also have Residence Life, who, as we speak, are deep in their trainings. They are our resident assistants and new student leaders who are learning how to work very well with all of our residents. They provide great support on this campus to our students, and we are very grateful to have them, as they are our frontline intervention when students run into any kind of problem, and they are always available 24/7. While the student has an RA on their floor, there are also other RAs and new student leaders who are circulating all hours of the day and night to help out. And we also have campus ministry. We have a chapel on campus with Jesuits, and both Jesuits and priests. We often, in a collaborative effort, work closely with campus ministry to provide services for counseling with religious undertones, and also if students are tied very closely to their religious resources at home, they find it a very welcoming place to go and meet our services on campus who provide the same for them while they are away at school. As Susan mentioned before, the Department of Public Safety, which looks a lot like police officers on bikes, and they're walking and they have their own cars on campus, can be looked to provide a great service to our students. They are very protective of our students and help us in many ways. They are often known to find students on campus who are having a tough time. They bring them up to counseling, they bring them to campus ministry, or wherever they need. So they are also an invaluable service to us.
So we've talked to you about all the different things that we're committed to at the university in terms of reducing risk, and importantly, to develop, for our students to develop the skills to make these healthy lifestyle choices. I'm going to pass over this next section and just review all those on our next slide. Your sons and daughters, before they come to Fairfield University, are taking that online alcohol education program. They're going to take a follow-up to it, I believe, in the end of October, beginning of November. I mentioned to you the first-year experience program. They're going to get a lot of information about alcohol and drug use, and importantly, the resources in our efforts on campus. They're going to have a unit on bystander intervention that I've mentioned to you. Lisa runs a choices class that she mentioned, and that's a lot of good information, and importantly, very interactive, where a student can reflect on the decisions and the choices they've made and how they might consider modifying those to be healthier. At Counseling and Psychological Services, we offer individual and group counseling, not only for all sorts of issues, but invariably we do look at their alcohol and drug use and whether or not that could be impacting their functioning personally and academically. I'm going to turn over now and go back to this slide. Lisa wants to tell you about a very special program at Fairfield University, which we think really distinguishes us from other universities, and importantly, in that continuum that I mentioned, the education, the interventions, the consequences, the assessments, the treatment, well, then we take it a step further at Fairfield University and provide services for those men and women in recovery. So Lisa's going to talk to you about that program.
So here at Fairfield University, we have our Collegiate Recovery Program, which is moving into its 5th year, beginning this September. And we offer the only residential services in the state of Connecticut for students in recovery from drug and alcohol use. And what that means is students who are committed to their recovery, not just sober, but are living a lifestyle free of alcohol and drug use, and attending 12-step meetings, engaging in service commitments, going on retreats, and all kinds of recreational activities which we have to offer students in recovery. Our residential program consists of 2 homes, and that it started as 1 home after 3 years due to the popularity of students gaining interest in being in recovery and also balancing their academics. We opened a 2nd house last September, so we are able to provide services for 10 residents in recovery. They are 2 capes within walking distance of our campus with 5 beds each. We have a house manager on site who provides all kinds of support and is really the liaison between clinical services and residential services for these students. And it's a wonderful program. We provide all kinds of recreational activities due to the generosity of funders who we've gained over the years, who've gained interest in what we're doing. Oftentimes they are alumni in recovery themselves or family and friends of the program, and they find out what we're doing on campus and would really like to help us financially. And they have provided dinners for our students and trips. As we speak, all of our recovery students this year are that are coming in September are on a trip right now, jet skiing and playing golf in Long Island, having a great time, so when they come back, they'll be fully rested for move-in weekend. So we are very proud and grateful to have developed this program over the years, and if anyone ever has any interest in the services that we offer, please feel free to contact me.
So, I mentioned early on that the university is very, very committed and devoted to address this issue head-on. It's a concern that not only can preclude their experience, their college experience, their education, but as I've indicated to you, there's some real health and safety risks here. So we are meeting this challenge head-on, and we are putting a lot of resources, a lot of people, a lot of money. Every life means the world to us. We need your help. We need to partner with you. We cannot do it alone. Some of the ways that we would like you to partner with us is by all means to have conversations with your son or daughter before they get here this weekend and ongoing throughout their time at Fairfield about their choices, about the risks, and importantly about the consequences. One of the things that I've heard parents say to me over the years is, in terms of academics, they've said, I say to my son or my daughter, you can get C's, but that means to me that you want to go to a community college. Well, I don't know if they're actually going to follow through or not, but that's the expectation that they put on their son or daughter, that they expect them to do well, to be good students, that it's a lot of money, a big commitment. They're at a fine university, a selective university, and the parents expect that. Other parents have said, and the students have told Lisa and I this, they've said, we understand that there's alcohol and drug use, but if you get more than one write-up, you'll signal me that you're not ready to live independently, because your life is that important to me. We've also watched some parents who, when the son or daughter is involved, gets written up, gets sanctioned, maybe by that I mean fines, maybe educational opportunities, the parents want to rush in and rescue the son and daughter. And what that signals to their son or daughter is, it's okay, I'm not taking it that seriously. Rite of passage, kids are going to drink. And we don't look at it that way. So we would ask you, let them experience the natural consequences. By all means, be there to support them, help them learn from unhealthy choices, but continue the conversation. We really need to partner with you. We can't do it alone. You see them, you talk to them. I think you're going to get a sense of what's going on. If you do have concerns about their well-being, don't hesitate to contact Lisa and I. We mean that. We want to be a resource to you, and importantly to work together to make this 4 years just positive and wonderful. There's going to be a lot of mistakes. That's how you learn. We're going to be right there by their side, but we really want to reduce that risky behavior. We're going to go to some questions right now. If any of you have any questions for Lisa or I, or would like us to elaborate on any of the comments or information we've shared, we're more than welcome to take them.
Great. So our first question is, will we be specifically notified if our student violates any alcohol or drug policy on campus?
Yes, you will be. The way that works is that under FERPA, which is the Family Educational Rights Protection Act, that the exception is for that you can be notified if there is an alcohol or drug infraction. My understanding is that the Office of the Dean of Students will send you a letter. I think that they have been asked in the past to actually make calls, so you may be getting a call. Certainly, if your son or daughter is transported to a hospital, you're going to be notified immediately of that situation so that you can contact the hospital and that you're right there with us partnering on that health issue.
Great. And also for anyone watching now, you can, like I mentioned before, you can submit your questions in that chat room or email engagement@fairfield.edu if you have any more coming up in the conversation. A next question that we have is, can my child call an escort service if they are uncomfortable at certain hours of the night on the weekends?
Yes, they certainly can. The way to do that is to contact public safety. Public safety provides escort services, and we encourage students to utilize that if they're not feeling safe. Additionally, throughout the campus, there's some blue lights, and so if a student is out, it doesn't have to be an emergency, but you're uncomfortable, maybe you want public safety to come, walk you back to the residence hall, or give you a ride, those blue lights can be activated, and there are many, many around campus. Yeah, utilize the resources and ask for help. And that's very much advocating for self, which we so encourage.
Great. And then the last one that I have at the moment is, does Fairfield have Greek life on campus? That tends to play a big role in college drinking.
We do not have fraternities or sororities at Fairfield University. They do tend to promote heavier drinking, and since we don't condone that behavior, we're very careful about any word that we get about clubs or sport activities that are producing this group-like initiative drinking, and so one of those reasons is that we don't have the Greek life on campus for that.
Something that's a little bit similar, though, you'll hear from the freshmen, is what they want to do when they get here on the weekend is they want to get up to the townhouse parties. These are upperclassmen, and it's kind of a more independent, it's like a condo unit that houses maybe 4 to 6 students. So the freshmen will see them in their rooms getting ready, oftentimes pre-gaming, drinking the shots, and then there's a big walk up to the townhouse area, and they try to get into the parties. And you can imagine the upperclassmen are there, they decide who they let in or not. If the party gets too big, public safety comes, will break it up, and really does a nice kind of inventory of how's everybody doing in terms of, is anyone compromised or needs help. So listen for that. You're going to hear probably that they want to get up to the townhouses. That's what's going on up there. They're parties, and there's a lot of alcohol. The other area is Fairfield Beach. We have an awful lot of seniors. I would say the bulk of our senior class at this point is living in rented beach houses down on the water. They're absolutely beautiful. It's a wonderful opportunity for our seniors to live away from campus, to live independently, to develop responsibility. It's also tends to be a party area. And so we also see Friday night and Saturday night, we see the cabs come to the circle in the middle of campus, and they're picking up the freshmen. The freshmen want to get down to the beach and see what's going on. What happens is the seniors at the beach don't want the freshmen in there because they're 21, and as you can imagine, the freshmen are not. And if the Fairfield police come, our public safety are not down there. This is municipal police come. They could certainly get written up for serving underage individuals, alcohol, and there could be some really stiff legal consequences for them. Nevertheless, the freshmen want to get down to the beach, and if they know somebody, some of them have brothers, sisters, cousins, friends from home, and they're able to, they're able to get into a beach house. So listen for that too. Know what's going on in that regard.
That's all the questions we have.
Okay, well, again, thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking the interest, taking the time to understand this part of the college experience. And again, please count on Lisa and I during your son's or daughter experience at Fairfield. We're eager to partner with you. Thank you.